Ever thought about learning Python, but it just seemed overwhelming? Well, what if it all boils down to just a handful of core ideas? In this quick explainer, we're going to break down the absolute essential building blocks of Python. This is the solid foundation anyone needs to start a coding journey.
So here's the plan. We're going to move fast, starting with how to store information. Then we'll get into making decisions, repeating actions, creating reusable code with functions, and finally, how to handle things when they don't go as planned. Let's dive right in.
All right, everything in programming, and I mean everything, starts with the basics. And the most fundamental idea is how we hold on to information. That's our very first building block.
And that first building block, it's called a variable. Just think of it as the way we label and store data so our program can remember it and use it whenever it needs to.
The best way to picture a variable is like a labeled box. We give the box a name and we put something inside it. It's a really simple idea, but it's so powerful. Pretty much everything else is built on top of this.
So in this example, our box is named item_name, and inside we've put the text orange. And see that underscore? That's a super common way in Python to write names that have more than one word.
Now, here's a really crucial detail that trips a lot of people up at first. Python is case sensitive. So as we see here, a variable named item with a lowercase I is completely different from one named item with a capital I. In the program's mind, those are two totally separate boxes.
So what kind of stuff can we put in these boxes? Well, there are four basic types of data. Strings are just plain text. Integers are whole numbers. Booleans are simple true or false values. That's it. And a list is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like, a collection of other items. But here's a catch. We can't just mix and match these types willy-nilly. For instance, Python doesn't know how to add the number 22 to the text Mario is. To make it work, the number has to be converted into a string first, using that little str function. Then, Python gets it and knows how to put them together.
Okay, so we can store data. Now what? What can we actually do with it? This brings us to our next building block, logic. This is what makes a program feel smart, by letting it make decisions and react differently based on the data it has.
A whole lot of that logic really just starts with simple math. Python can act like a quick calculator using these very familiar operators for addition, subtraction, multiplication. You get the idea.
This flow right here is the heart of how programs make choices. It starts with an if statement to check if something is true. If it is, boom, it runs a specific piece of code. If not, it can check another condition using else if, which is shortened to elif in Python. And if none of those conditions are true, it just falls back to the final else block.
Making a decision one time is useful, sure, but what if something needs to happen 100 times? Writing that out would be a nightmare. And that's where our next building block, loops, comes in. Loops are all about automation.
The for loop is a real workhorse in programming. Here, range of 3 is basically telling the loop to run 3 times. And each time it runs, it prints hello along with whatever the current count is. But wait a second. If it runs 3 times, why are the numbers 0, 1, and 2 instead of 1, 2, 3? That is an excellent question, and the answer is a core concept in the world of programming.
And here's the answer. It's a fundamental rule. In programming, counting almost always starts at 0. 0 is considered the first position, or the first index. Once that idea clicks, a lot of other things in coding start to make a whole lot more sense.
Now, the other main type of loop is the while loop. It just keeps on running as long as a certain condition is true. This could be for a set amount of time, like running while a counter is less than 5. Or it can be an infinite loop, which is super useful for things like games or servers that need to run forever until a special break command tells them to stop.
Okay, so we can store data, make decisions, and repeat actions. But great programming isn't just about making things work. It's about being efficient. That's where our next building block comes in, functions.
This quote really hits the nail on the head. It's all about smart programming. Why write the same lines of code over and over again? The real goal is to write it once, package it up, and then reuse it whenever it's needed.
And that is exactly what a function lets us do. We use the def keyword to define a block of code, giving it a name like say hello. From then on, anytime we need to say hello, we just call that function by its name. Simple as that.
And here's a little pro tip for planning out code. Let's say we know a function is needed, but the logic isn't figured out yet. Just put the keyword pass inside. It's basically a placeholder that tells Python, hey, this is empty on purpose, don't crash. It's awesome for building out the skeleton of a program.
We're almost at the finish line. The code is organized, it's efficient,
But the real world is messy. People do unexpected things. Our final building block is all about making our code tough enough to handle errors.
Think of this as the program's safety net. Any risky code gets wrapped in a try block. If it works, fantastic. But if something goes wrong, like someone types text when a number was expected, the program doesn't just crash and burn. Instead, it jumps over to the accept block and runs that code gracefully.
And there we have it, the 5 core building blocks of Python. We've got variables to store data, logic to make decisions, loops to automate tasks, functions to reuse code, and error handling to manage the unexpected. That's the whole shebang.
These really are the fundamental tools. From a simple calculator all the way to a complex video game, every single program is built from these same basic pieces. The only question left is, with these building blocks in hand, what gets built first?